The first thing I saw was the frost on her eyelashes. Not the storm, not the wreckage half buried in ice. Not even the fact that the moon's night could kill a grown man in minutes. Just those lashes, crystal white, trembling above eyes too big for her face. She was wedged inside a snapped open cargo pod like it was a nest, wrapped in foil blankets that had long since turned to brittle sheets. Her skin, pale blue, faintly luminous, looked like glass about to crack. And when my light hit her, she didn't scream. She only whispered, like saying it out loud would make it true again. Mom said, "Wait here." I shouldn't have been out in the white, that's the truth. The kind you admit to yourself when no one else is listening. The contract said salvage support, which is corporate code for go poke the dead ship until it pays you. But the storm bands on Kestrel 9 didn't care about contracts, and the temperature didn't care about optimism. Everything out here existed in two categories, frozen or freezing. I trudged across the drift field with my visor HUD flickering warnings in angry red. Thermal loss, 12% min. Wind shear, extreme. Recommendation, return to shelter. My shelter was a half-collapsed survey hut 2 kilometers behind me. My reason for being out here was a distress ping that shouldn't exist. An old emergency transponder, archaic frequency, low power. The kind of signal that meant either a forgotten cache or someone praying into the dark. I'd told myself it was salvage. Then I found the wreck. A small shuttle more crater than craft, its hull cracked like an eggshell under a glacier's fist. Ice had grown through it in jagged veins. The storm had sandblasted the markings away, leaving only a faint emblem, 3 crescents in a spiral, half visible under rime. I scanned the debris for anything useful. A power cell. A medkit, anything. That's when I saw the cargo pod. It wasn't the kind meant for freight. Too small, too rounded. Like someone had designed it with comfort in mind. The hatch was buckled outward as if something inside had pushed it open and then given up halfway. I approached cautiously, my boots crunching on ice. The storm hissed across my suit, trying to peel me away like a sticker. "Hello?" My voice sounded tiny in the helmet. "Anyone in there?" The pod didn't answer. My gloved hand found the hatch seam. I forced it wider with a grunt, metal groaning, and swung my light inside. That's when the world narrowed to frost on eyelashes. She was small, child-sized by any species, math curled on her side with knees pulled to her chest. 4 fingered hands tucked beneath her chin. A thin membrane ran from wrist to elbow like a folded wing. Her clothes were too light for this place, a soft suit in faded colors torn at the shoulder. Her eyes opened slowly, pupils dilating against my beam. The irises were a deep violet like bruised twilight. She didn't scream, didn't flinch away. She just whispered, voice so dry it sounded like snow sliding off glass. "Mom said wait here." My throat tightened. The HUD kept screaming at me about thermal loss, but my brain had already made its decision before I could argue. "Hey," I said, softer. "Hey, kid, I'm not your mom, but I'm here." Her gaze tracked my helmet like it was a monster wearing a man. She tried to sit up and failed, a shiver ripping through her fragile body. I scanned her with my suit's medical sensor. Body temp critical, dehydration, severe, caloric deficit, extreme. Time since last adequate intake, 6288 HOURS EST. Days, alone for days. My hands moved without permission, unfastening the emergency thermal blanket strapped to my pack. The foil flashed in my light like a slice of moon. I draped it across the pod opening to block the wind, then crawled halfway in, careful not to crowd her. "What's your name?" I asked. She blinked. Her lips parted. No sound came out. I tried again, slower, like teaching language to a frightened animal. "My name is Jalen," I said, tapping my chest plate. "Yalen." Her eyes followed the motion, then barely audible, "Sorry." "Sorry," I repeated. "Okay, sorry, we're going to get you warm. Can you do that with me? Can you hold on?" Her gaze slipped to the wreck outside. The storm beyond my blanket shimmered with dancing ice crystals. She swallowed. "Mom will come back." I didn't lie, not to her. Not to myself. "I don't know," I said, "but I'm here now and I'm not leaving you." That apparently was the wrong thing to say because her face crumpled like paper and a sound came out of her that wasn't words, wasn't a wail, just a broken little breath that turned into a sob. She had waited until someone else arrived to fall apart, as if her body had been holding its own emergency protocol together with a single thread of belief. I glanced at the shuttle wreck again. No bodies visible. No heat signatures. If her mom had been alive, she'd have come back. Unless she couldn't, my jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. Okay, I said firmly, like I could command the universe. Okay, plan, we get you out of here. I pulled out a hydration tube from my suit's emergency pouch, warmed it against my chest heater for a few seconds, and held it near her lips. Small sips, I told her. Just a little. She hesitated, then drank with desperate restraint like she didn't trust abundance. When she finished, I injected a mild stimulant and micro-calorie gel, human grade, but my suit's med module confirmed it was safe for her biology in small doses. It wasn't a feast. It was a promise. Then I did the dumbest thing I'd done in months. I unsealed my suit. Only the chest collar, only long enough to slide my inner thermal liner out and wrap it around her torso. Cold air knifed in instantly, stealing my breath, but I sealed it again before my lungs could panic. My HUD blared, suit integrity compromised, patch required. I know, I muttered, I know. Sorai's eyes widened as the warmth hit her. She clutched the liner with shaky hands like it was a living thing. Warm, she whispered like she'd forgotten the word existed. Yeah, I said, humans are basically walking heaters, occupational hazard. She didn't understand, of course, but something in my tone loosened her shoulders. I lifted her carefully. She weighed almost nothing, too light, too many days, her head lolled against my arm. Reflexively, she hooked her fingers into my sleeve, gripping tight. The storm chose that moment to roar louder, as if offended by my hope. I turned my back to the wind and began the long walk home. The survey hut had been built by people who believed in budgets more than survival. Its walls were thin, its insulation mediocre, and its power system was designed for temporary habitation. Temporary was a lie out here. I slammed the hatch shut behind me and silence fell like a blanket. The heater in the corner sputtered, then caught, flooding the single-room hut with the smell of burning dust. I laid Sorai on my sleeping pad and layered every spare blanket over her like I was building a nest. Her eyes tracked me constantly, alert in the way of prey. Okay, I said, rummaging through my supplies. We do heat first, then fluids, then food, then we figure out how the hell you ended up in a cargo pod on a death moon. She made a tiny noise. What? Her lips moved slowly, forming syllables with effort. Don't tell them, I paused. Them, her pupils dilated, her membrane wings, if that's what they were, tightened against her arms. Uniform voices, loud, took, Mom. A chill that had nothing to do with Kestrel 9 crawled up my spine. You mean pirates? I asked. She blinked, uncertain. I tried a different angle. Military. She flinched like the word hurt. That was answer enough. I sat down beside her, careful to keep my movements smooth. Sorry, I said. Whoever they are they coming back? Her throat bobbed. Mom said wait. She said she'd come. I swallowed. Did she say why she had to leave? Sorai's gaze drifted to a corner of the ceiling like she was replaying a memory projected there. She went out. Wind hurt her. She crawled back and said, Wait, I get help. Her eyes shimmered, bioluminescence rising like tidewater. She didn't come. The words hung in the hut, heavy and final. I looked away so she wouldn't see my face do whatever it was doing. I focused on practical things, hooking the heater into my suit power pack, rerouting voltage, warming a nutrient pack, calibrating the hut's comm array. My salvage rig wasn't meant for long-range transmission, but it could scream if you made it angry enough. I opened a channel, blasted a distress beacon across every band I could access, then repeated in plain trade language. Unidentified child found, need medical EVAC, coordinates attached. I paused, then added, quieter, more personal. If you're looking for your people SHES alive. The comm crackled with only static. Out here, space felt less like a highway and more like an ocean. Signals were bottles thrown into black water. I turned back to Sorai. She drifted into a shallow sleep, breath shallow but steadier, frost gone from her lashes. Her fingers still clutched my thermal liner. I sat against the wall and did what humans always do when faced with helplessness. I made things. I dismantled a spare drone battery and wired it into a makeshift warming pad under her sleeping bag. I repurposed a light panel as a radiant heater. I sewed the tear in her suit with emergency thread. Hours passed. The storm howled. The hut shuddered under gusts like a ship in rough seas. Near dawn, if dawn existed here, a pale shift in the sky, I heard a sound that didn't belong. A low thrum. Engines. I snapped upright, heart punching my ribs. I killed the hut's internal light and peered through the frost-caked window. A shadow moved in the whiteout, then another. Through the storm's veil, sleek shapes descended, dropships with vector thrusters, their hulls cutting the snow like knives. Not pirates. Too clean, too disciplined. My comm unit crackled to life, an automated hail in a language I didn't recognize. The tone was formal, clipped. Then it switched to trade. Human occupant of survey hut, identify yourself. You are in possession of a subject of state interest. I felt my stomach drop. State interest, not survivor, not child. Subject. I looked at Sorai. She was awake now, eyes huge, breathing fast. Uniform voices, she whispered. I didn't have time to be afraid for myself, only time to choose. I keyed the comm. This is Jalen Marr, I said. Independent salvage tech. I found a child in a wreck. She's hypothermic and dehydrated. She needs a medic, not a squad. A pause, static, then open the hatch, remain still, do not interfere with recovery. Recovery, like she was cargo. Sorai's fingers dug into my sleeve, her membranes trembled. Don't, she breathed. They take. I stood slow and deliberate and pulled on my jacket, thick, insulated, patched with more repairs than original fabric. I placed myself between her and the door. Listen to me, I told her low. I don't know who they are, but you're not alone anymore. Her voice cracked. Mom said, wait. I know, I said, and you did exactly what she told you. Now it's my turn to do something. A heavy knock hit the hatch, metal on metal, impatient. I answered before they could break it. I opened the inner latch a fraction, keeping the storm curtain sealed behind. Cold air hissed through the crack. A figure loomed outside, tall and angular in armored plating. The helmet's visor was mirrored. Behind them, more soldiers, 6, maybe 8, fanned out with practiced geometry. The leader's voice came through a suit amplifier. Human, step aside. I held my ground. Do you have a medic? A beat. Medic unit is inbound. How long? Unknown. She doesn't have unknown, I said. She's been alone for days. The leader tilted their head slightly, as if listening to something inside the helmet. Subject S4 is to be secured immediately. Behind me, Sorai made a small sound, half sob, half gasp. Subject S4, she wasn't a person to them. She was an entry on a roster. I felt something in me go very still. Her name is Sorai, I said, and she stays inside until a medic is here. That's non-negotiable. The soldiers shifted. Weapons weren't aimed, yet but hands hovered near them like habits. The leader's tone hardened. Human, you are obstructing a lawful operation under sovereign retrieval statute. Then cite it to the storm, I snapped. Because I'm not handing a freezing kid to armored strangers without medical clearance. Silence. Then unexpectedly, a new voice cut in, female, older, strained, speaking trade with a heavy accent. Jalen Marr, I blinked. Who is this? My name is Captain Vera Hal, the voice said. 3rd Crescent Diplomatic Security. 3rd Crescent, the emblem on the shuttle. My heart thudded. You're hers. A pause, like the word hers landed somewhere tender. We have been searching, Captain Hal said. We received your beacon. Good, I said. Then you know she needs help. We have help, the captain replied. But you must understand this child is significant. That word again, significant, state interest, retrieval. Sorai whimpered behind me. I lowered my voice. Captain, she's terrified of your people. Another pause, longer, then softer. Of ours or of those wearing our uniforms? I stared. What? The voice came tight. Do you see a silver band on the soldier's left shoulder plate? I looked. Through the crack, I spotted it, a thin metallic stripe on the leader's armor. Yes, Captain Hal exhaled like a confession. That is not Third Crescent security, that is internal compliance. My blood went cold. Compliance, I repeated. The captain's words came carefully, as if each one might detonate. They were not authorized to deploy to this location. They moved first because they believed the child's return must be controlled. Controlled how? I demanded. Silence. And in that silence, I understood far too much. I looked back at Sorai. She was shaking, eyes locked on the hatch like it was a mouth. "Mom, they took Mom," she whispered. I turned to the soldiers again. "Where is her mother?" The leader's helmet didn't move. Irrelevant. That was the moment my fear turned into something else. "Get off my doorstep," I said quietly. The leader stepped forward. "Human." I opened the hatch wider, not to surrender, but to stand fully in the doorway. Cold slammed into me, biting through layers, my breath fogged. "I'm not a citizen of your sovereign," I said. "I'm not under your statute, and she's under medical protection." The leader raised a hand. Two soldiers shifted. Captain Hal's voice crackled urgently in my ear. "Jalen, do not escalate." "It's already escalated," I said, and keyed my suit's external speakers so everyone could hear. "This is a humanitarian emergency. Any attempt to forcibly remove a minor without medical oversight will be recorded and broadcast on open salvage channels." The leader paused. They knew what that meant. Salvage channels weren't just junk talk. They were watched by insurers, by corporations, by bored journalists looking for scandal. A single clip could become an interstellar headache. "Step aside," the leader repeated, but there was hesitation now. Behind me, Sorai made a sound like a small animal cornered. I didn't look away from the soldiers. I reached back with one hand, palm open, and Sorai's fingers latched onto it like a lifeline. "Tell your compliance friends," I said, "that a human found her, and a human is keeping her alive, and if you want to make this ugly, I'll make it famous." The storm howled around us, eager for violence. For a long second, no one moved. Then the leader's head turned slightly, as if receiving an update. "Captain Hal is inbound," the leader said flatly. "Good," I replied. "I'll talk to her." The leader took a step back, reluctant but real. The squad loosened their formation. They didn't leave, but they didn't advance. That was the best I could buy with stubbornness and the threat of public embarrassment. I retreated inside and sealed the hatch. Sorai collapsed against me, trembling. Her skin glowed faintly, pulsing with panic. "Breathe," I told her, sitting on the floor with her. "In, out like this." She tried to match my rhythm, hiccuping sobs between breaths. After a minute, she whispered, "You stayed." "Yeah," I said. "Humans do that sometimes. We're annoying." A tiny sound escaped her, almost a laugh, but broken at the edges. Outside, the engine thrum grew louder again, then shifted. Another ship descending, different pitch, heavier. The comm clicked. Captain Hal spoke again, closer now, her voice no longer distant through relays. "Jalen Marr," she said, "I am at your location. I am unarmed. Please open the hatch." I looked at Sorai, her eyes pleaded. "I won't let them take you," I promised. Then I opened the hatch. A figure stepped inside, bringing a gust of snow with her. She was tall, wrapped in a heavy coat rather than armor, her face exposed to the cold behind a thin thermal veil. Her skin was darker than Sorai's, deep indigo with faint silver mottling, and her eyes were the same violet twilight. She saw Sorai, something in her expression shattered, professional composure collapsing into raw relief. "Sorai," she breathed. Sorai's body went rigid. She stared. Then in a whisper so small it barely existed, "Aunt Vera." Captain Hal dropped to her knees despite the cold floor, hands trembling as she reached out but didn't touch, giving Sorai the choice. "Yes," she said, voice thick. "Yes, little star, I'm here." Sorai made a noise that was halfway between disbelief and hope. "Mom." Captain Hal's eyes flicked to me, pain, warning. I swallowed. My throat felt full of ice. Captain Hal turned back to Sorai and spoke gently, like easing someone across thin glass. "Your mother is not here," she said, "but she tried to get help." Sorai's face crumpled again, the same delayed collapse. "She said, wait." "I know," Captain Hal whispered. "And you did." You were brave beyond measure. Sarai shook her head. They took her. Captain Hal's jaw tightened. Yes, she said quietly, they did. In the doorway, the armored leader shifted as if uncomfortable witnessing grief. Captain Hal lifted her gaze and her voice sharpened to a blade. Internal compliance, she said, naming them aloud. You will stand down, the leader's amplifier crackled. Captain Hal, you are out of jurisdiction. I am diplomatic security, she snapped. And you are operating illegally on a frontier moon under false authority. If you touch this child, I will personally ensure your names are spoken in every chamber that matters. The leader hesitated. Politics had teeth. Captain Hal turned to me, breath visible. Human, she said, you have done a sacred thing. I rubbed the back of my neck, suddenly aware of how tired I was. I just didn't want her to die. Captain Hal's eyes softened. That is what I mean. Behind her, a medic team rushed in, real medics, insulated packs, gentle hands. They knelt beside Sarai and began scanning, warming, hydrating. Sarai didn't let go of my hand, even as the medic adjusted her blanket, even as Captain Hal murmured soothing words in her language. Sarai's fingers stayed wrapped around mine like a vow. I leaned down. You're going to be okay, I told her. She looked up at me, eyes glossy. Mom said humans scary, she whispered. I huffed a tired laugh. We are, but we're also kind of decent sometimes. She swallowed. You are. The medic lifted her onto a stretcher. Sarai panicked until I moved with them, keeping my hand on her blanket. Captain Hal walked beside us, shoulders squared now, every inch a captain again. Outside, the compliance squad stood in the storm like statues. Their leader watched, powerless. As the dropship ramp lowered, Captain Hal spoke low, meant only for me. Her mother was a whistle, she said. She was going to expose what compliance has been doing, disappearances, experiments, control measures. They intercepted her shuttle. She forced the pod loose and told Sarai to wait. My stomach twisted. She saved her, I said. Captain Hal nodded once, fierce. Yes, and because you found Sarai alive, their lie collapses. I looked at the white horizon, at the wreck half buried in ice. Will they come after her again? I asked. Captain Hal's gaze hardened. Not if I can help it. Sarai's eyelids fluttered, heavy with warmth and meds. She whispered, barely coherent. Jalen, come? I froze. Captain Hal blinked, then looked at me. The rational answer was no. I was a nobody. A salvage tech with a leaky hut and a contract that barely paid for my fuel. But the child's hand tightened weakly, even in sleep. And I remembered the frost on her eyelashes, the way she hadn't screamed, only waited. I exhaled slowly. I'll come until she's stable, I said. After that, we'll see. Captain Hal's expression softened with something like gratitude. Then come, she said, and know this, in our language there is a word for those who shelter the lost in the storm. I lifted an eyebrow. What is it? Captain Hal's lips trembled into the faintest smile. Home. The storm on Kestrel 9 kept screaming long after the dropships vanished into the clouds. But inside that cabin, for the first time in days, a child finally stopped waiting alone. And maybe that's the most dangerous thing humans do in a cold universe. We don't just survive, we stay.